My name is Jessica Morgan, and I used to believe that family was a safe harbor, an unshakable truth, the thing you could always count on, until the day my world flipped upside down in my parents' driveway in a quiet Chicago suburb. Sometimes, even now, I can still see the scene play out in slow motion behind my eyelids, the sharp November wind, the red and blue lights reflecting off the neighbor's perfectly waxed SUV, my father's face hard as stone, my brother Ethan standing off to the side, arms crossed, refusing to meet my gaze. It's been 8 years since that day, and I still haven't decided what hurt more, the handcuffs or the heartbreak. I was 33, working double shifts for the Chicago Police Department, trying to prove myself as one of the only women in my precinct. I had always been the good kid, the straight-A student, the daughter who played by the rules and volunteered for every overtime shift just to help out at home. My younger brother Ethan was the golden child, the charming one, the favorite. He could do no wrong in my mother's eyes, even as an adult. I guess every family has their favorite, but mine wore it like a crown. The day everything changed started like any other. I woke up to my mother's texts, reminders to stop by for Sunday lunch, to bring dessert if I had time, to call my father about the gutters. My parents had lived in the same house in Oak Park for nearly 30 years, a classic two-story with a blue door and a porch swing where we used to drink lemonade in the summer. I loved that house. I loved the routine, the sense of stability it gave me in a job where chaos was the norm. But that morning, I felt something off. There was a tension in my chest I couldn't explain, a heaviness that settled between my ribs. I tried to shake it off, blaming it on lack of sleep or too much coffee, but the feeling only grew as the day went on. I should have listened to my gut. It was Ethan who called me that afternoon, his voice tight and urgent. "Jess, you need to come by the house. Mom's worried. Dad's upset. I think you should just get over here, okay?" There was a sharp edge to his tone that made my stomach clench. I should have known then. I should have known this was a setup. I parked my battered Ford Crown Vic at the curb, barely noticing the neighbors' little kids peering from behind their curtains. The air smelled like fallen leaves and gasoline. I barely had time to get out of my car before Ethan was at my side, eyes wide and darting around. "What's going on?" I asked. He shrugged. "They just want to talk to you, Jess." My mother met me on the porch, her lips pressed together, face pale. My father stood inside the doorway, fists balled at his sides. The house felt colder than usual. I tried to hug my mom, but she flinched away. That was the first cut. The second came minutes later, as my father began to shout, questions I couldn't answer, accusations that made no sense. "What's going on with you, Jessica? Are you using drugs? Have you lost your mind?" I stared at him, stunned. "Dad, what are you talking about?" He waved a piece of paper in my face, some prescription pads missing from Ethan's work, my name scribbled at the bottom, as if I'd been forging scripts. I felt my jaw drop. I didn't do this. Why would you think I would? Ethan's eyes glistened with false worry. "Jess, we just want to help you. You haven't been yourself. People are talking." I realized too late that the neighbors were gathering, that someone had called the police. Not just any police, my own colleagues, my own department, lights flashing, sirens off but presence loud and clear. I heard my mother sob as the first officer approached. I wanted to scream, to explain, to tell them all how wrong they were, but before I could even catch my breath, someone took my arm. Cold steel pressed against my wrist. I heard the Miranda rights recited, each word echoing in my mind. "Jessica Morgan, you are under arrest," and my dad's face twisted with disgust. "She's no daughter of ours," he spat, loud enough for every neighbor to hear. The walk to the patrol car felt endless, every step pounding a new nail into the coffin of my old life. The world narrowed to whispers and stares. I caught Ethan's smirk out of the corner of my eye, so quick I almost thought I'd imagined it. My mother's hands trembled. My father wouldn't look at me. I wanted to shout, to make them see me, but my voice was gone. The badge I'd worked so hard for felt like a brand, not a shield. That night in the holding cell, the concrete walls closing in, I replayed every moment on a loop. I kept asking myself, what did I miss? When did my family stop believing in me? Where did I go so wrong that the people I loved most thought I was capable of destroying myself like this? 3 days later, the charges vanished. No one told me why. My union rep handed me my things and said, "You're cleared, Morgan. Just take some time off." But my parents never called, never asked what happened. Ethan never showed up. I wasn't welcome at home anymore. The girl who used to bring her badge to show and tell was now a cautionary tale, the family's dirty secret. The worst part wasn't losing my job or my reputation. It was the silence. The unanswered texts. The holidays spent alone. The way my mother stopped sending recipes, how my father's name disappeared from my phone's favorites list. Even my childhood dog wouldn't wag her tail when I drove by. Overnight, I became a ghost in my own life. Oak Park felt smaller, meaner, every corner hiding another memory of who I used to be. At the grocery store, people would turn away or whisper behind my back. "That's her. The one who fell apart." At church, I sat alone. At family gatherings, my chair was empty. Everyone believed the worst, and no one ever bothered to ask for my side of the story. But there was something else, something deeper than pain. A slow, burning anger. Not the kind that explodes, but the kind that simmers, full for something bigger, something that would keep me alive when the world wanted me to disappear. I was a cop. I was trained to fight back. But this time, it wasn't criminals I had to face. It was the people who were supposed to love me no matter what. 8 years have passed since that afternoon in my parents' driveway. 8 years since my family turned their backs. 8 years of watching my brother thrive while I disappeared, piece by piece. But what nobody knew, what not even my closest friends suspected, was that the story didn't end there. Not by a long shot. Because the truth is, my arrest wasn't the end of my story. It was just the beginning. 8 years is enough time for a life to unravel, for wounds to fester and harden into scars, for even the sharpest pain to dull into something like indifference. But for me, those years became a crucible. Every memory of that driveway, every accusation, every sideways glance at the supermarket, all of it fueled the quiet fire inside me. After my arrest, my entire world collapsed in slow motion. The Oak Park house, once my sanctuary, became off-limits territory. My mother's phone number sat at the top of my contacts list, but every call went unanswered. My father stopped answering my texts. And Ethan? He pretended I didn't exist. Even on the rare occasions our paths crossed, once at the pharmacy, another time at a local coffee shop, he'd nod as if greeting a stranger and hurry away, eager to erase me from his life. The only family I had left was my badge, and even that felt like a question mark. The news of my downfall is spread quickly. Family friends, Neighbors, even distant relatives reached out to my parents, whispering condolences, delivering meals in disposable trays, offering unsolicited prayers for my recovery. Their pity stung almost as much as their gossip. What a shame about Jessica, they'd murmur at church picnics and PTA meetings. So much potential, just thrown away. I became the ghost story parents told their kids, a warning about drugs, about bad choices, about disappointment. Nobody asked what really happened. Nobody wondered why the charges vanished as suddenly as they'd appeared. Nobody cared that the evidence was thin, that nothing about the story made sense. My family, so quick to believe the worst, never paused to wonder why a girl who'd never missed a curfew would suddenly spiral into chaos overnight. They needed a villain. And I was the perfect candidate. My mother, once the heart of our family, erased me from her daily rituals. No more recipe texts, no more last-minute coffee dates. My father, stoic, unyielding, acted as though I'd died. At Thanksgiving, my empty chair was ignored. At Christmas, my stocking disappeared from the mantel. The only reminder of my existence was the hushed conversations that fell silent whenever someone mentioned my name. I was alive, but I no longer belonged. The ache of that exile changed me. I stopped trying to reach out. I packed my life into 2 suitcases and moved into a studio apartment on the north side, a world away from Oak Park's manicured lawns and neighborly barbecues. The building was old, the plumbing unreliable, but for the first time in months, I felt safe, unseen, unjudged, free to grieve in private. For a while, my days blurred together. I woke up late, wandered the city, nursed cheap coffee at diners where no one knew my name. Nights were worse, restless hours haunted by dreams of my family's faces, the sting of my father's words, the memory of Ethan's calculated concern. The loneliness threatened to swallow me whole. But then something unexpected happened. The department reached out, not to offer an apology, but to ask for my help. They needed someone with experience, someone who could blend in, someone who understood both sides of the badge. They needed me for something undercover. I'd been trained for this, prepared for danger, but nothing could have prepared me for how personal the mission would become. It started small. Odd hours, mysterious phone calls, unmarked cars waiting for me outside my building. I told myself it was temporary, just until things calmed down. But as the weeks passed, the operation grew. I found myself slipping deeper into a world of secrets, drug deals, coded language, backroom meetings. My name changed, my history rewritten. I became a ghost by choice, trading Jessica Morgan for a new identity. And all the while, my family faded further into the background. I learned not to flinch when someone mentioned the Morgans at the precinct. I stopped searching for familiar faces in crowds. Instead, I built a new family, a tight-knit crew of officers and agents who understood what it meant to lose everything for the job. We were bonded by risk and necessity, by a loyalty forged in shadows. But even undercover, I couldn't escape Oak Park completely. The network I was tracking ran deeper than anyone realized, stretching from Detroit to Atlanta, from seedy motels to quiet suburban homes just like the one I'd grown up in. And the more I dug, the more familiar the faces became. Friends of Ethan's. Old classmates. Even the pharmacist who used to slip me lollipops as a kid. Each new connection was a reminder of what I'd lost. Every raid, every bust, every coded message was another thread in the tangled web that bound my past to my present. I saw echoes of my family everywhere, a mother's desperate hope, a father's disappointed glare, a brother's charming smile masking something darker underneath. The hardest part wasn't the danger or the sleepless nights. It wasn't the fear of getting caught or the strain of living a double life. The hardest part was knowing that, no matter how many criminals I put away, I could never arrest the real crime, the betrayal of my own blood. Yet, with every day that passed, I grew stronger. The pain didn't disappear, but it became something I could carry. I learned to trust my instincts again, to rely on the small circle of people who'd proven their loyalty not with words, but with actions. I rediscovered the part of myself that had joined the force in the first place, the stubborn girl who believed in justice, in truth, in second chances. As the months turned into years, I stopped waiting for my family to call. I stopped hoping for an apology that would never come. Instead, I threw myself into the work, tracking shipments, surveilling suspects, building a case that would one day bring everything into the light. The operation was bigger than me, bigger than Oak Park, bigger even than the wounds that refused to heal. I became the cautionary tale my family whispered about. But I also became something more, a survivor, a fighter, a woman who refused to let her story end in that driveway. And somewhere in the shadows, I could sense that the past wasn't done with me yet. The circle wasn't closed. There were secrets left to uncover, and I wasn't about to walk away, not when justice, and maybe even redemption, were finally within reach. Going undercover, I learned, means becoming a shapeshifter. I traded my name for aliases, my badge for a burner phone, my apartment for a string of cheap motels with scratchy sheets and always the hum of traffic outside the window. The woman I saw in the mirror became someone else, a little thinner, hair dyed darker, smile a touch sharper. I carried myself with a different confidence, the kind born not from pride but necessity. I still remembered the woman I'd been, the dutiful daughter, the rookie cop, the girl who memorized her mother's banana bread recipe and always called home on Sundays, but she felt far away, like a character in a story I once loved. The work was exhausting, a different kind of hard than patrol. My world shrank to the routine of surveillance, coded conversations, long hours hunched over takeout in parked cars, scribbling notes by streetlight. I spent my days and nights threading myself into the fabric of Chicago's underbelly, run-down apartment buildings, shadowy bars on the edge of the city, warehouses that smelled of ammonia and secrets. My contact with the outside world dwindled to a handful of trusted colleagues, Lauren Chen, my DEA partner, Lieutenant Grace Harper, my handler, and, occasionally, the quiet comfort of a therapist who listened without judgment and reminded me that dissociation was normal. My life, once so meticulously planned, became a careful balancing act. I learned how to walk into a room and make people underestimate me, how to blend in, how to listen, how to earn the trust of people who'd shoot me for a mistake. I learned, too, to keep my real heart locked away, safe behind a wall of practiced indifference. It was the only way to survive. But no matter how deep I got, Oak Park haunted me. The network I was tracking was run by professionals, dangerous, organized, ruthless. But it was their foot soldiers who kept me up at night. The college students who'd started out just a helping a friend here and wound up dealing pills to keep up with tuition. The single mothers who worked 2 jobs and still couldn't pay their bills, tempted by the promise of quick cash for a few and no questions asked errands. I saw my younger self in them sometimes, desperate for belonging, hungry for approval. Yet, nothing prepared me for the day my investigation took me back to my own past. It was a Tuesday night, bitter cold, the wind slicing through my jacket as I staked out a house in Logan Square. I'd been following a lead for weeks, tracing a supply chain that ran from the outskirts of Detroit all the way to Miami. That night, a name popped up in a conversation between 2 mid-level dealers, a name I recognized instantly. Ethan. At first, I thought it was coincidence. Ethan's not a rare name in the Midwest. But then came the details. A guy with medical connections, a talent for forging scripts, someone smart enough to stay off the radar but ambitious enough to climb fast. My brother. The world seemed to tilt, nausea crawling up my throat. I forced myself to listen, to jot down every word, every code, every time they mentioned his name. The facts were damning. Ethan had started out small, stealing prescription pads from the urgent care where he worked as a physician assistant. He'd sold the pills to college kids at Northwestern, then expanded, upping his profits, building a loyal client base. Soon, he was moving serious weight. And, according to the wiretap, he'd just started a meth lab, somewhere out by the lake. I knew immediately where that was. Our family's lake house in Wisconsin. The place we'd spent every summer growing up, fishing for bluegill off the dock and roasting marshmallows in the fire pit. The place my parents had bought before I was born, the one refuge left after my exile from Oak Park. The irony stung. While my family had mourned the daughter they thought they'd lost to drugs, their golden boy had been building a criminal empire in their own backyard. Part of me wanted to march into Ethan's life and demand answers. Part of me wanted to disappear, pretend I'd never heard his name. But the cop in me, the woman I'd fought to become, knew what had to be done. There could be no special treatment, no blind eye. Justice was supposed to be impartial, even when it cut close to home. I spent 6 months building the case, methodically gathering evidence. Every phone call, every delivery, every coded Venmo payment. The more I watched, the more impressed I became, not as a sister, but as an investigator. Ethan was careful. He used his medical knowledge to keep his product pure, his charm to keep customers loyal, and his position as the family favorite to shield himself from suspicion. My parents, still grieving their lost daughter, had no idea their beloved son was turning their lakeside retreat into a toxic wasteland. All the while, I lived with the ache of betrayal. Ethan had called the cops on me that day, painted me as unstable, ruined my relationship with my family. And for what? To keep his own secret safe, to ensure nobody suspected him? Sometimes at night I'd replay our childhood in my head, looking for clues, signs I'd missed. I found only memories, good and bad, moments when we'd been close, moments when the distance between us had already started to grow. I stopped believing in easy answers. My anger became a cold thing, sharper and more useful than grief. The day the raid was set, I barely slept. The plan was meticulous, coordinated with the DEA, local PD, and environmental health. We chose the date on purpose, my parents' 40th wedding anniversary. The entire family would be at the lake house, celebrating. Everyone except me, or so Ethan believed. I didn't recognize myself in the mirror that morning. My hands were steady as I loaded my weapon and pinned my badge to my chest, but my heart thudded so loudly I worried someone would hear it over the radio. Lauren gave me a searching look as we drove north, the sun barely up over Lake Michigan. "You sure about this, Jess?" she asked. I managed a smile. I've never been more sure about anything. I owed it to the little girl who still believed family meant forever. I owed it to the woman who refused to be defined by a lie. And I owed it to myself. The drive up to the lake house in Wisconsin was unlike any other trip I'd made. I remembered every curve in the road, every weathered barn and old billboard. This route used to mean family vacations, fishing rods bouncing in the back of Dad's Chevy, Ethan humming off-key to whatever song was stuck in his head. But this time, my hands were wrapped around the wheel of an unmarked Tahoe, and my heart wasn't filled with excitement, it was steel and purpose. Lauren rode beside me, her face stoic, checking her gear for the third time since we'd left Chicago. "Want to run the entry plan again?" she asked. I nodded, grateful for the distraction. We went through the steps, tactical approach, points of entry, who would secure the family, who would be responsible for Ethan. We talked in clipped, professional tones, masking the truth. This was not just another bust. This was my family. As we neared the town, my phone buzzed. A text from a number I didn't recognize. "Are you coming today? Mom says she wishes you'd call." No name, no signature, but I knew the cadence. It was Ethan. Even now, even after everything, part of me ached at the idea that he, or maybe my mother, still wanted to reach out. I shut off my phone, shoving away the emotion. Today, I had to be a cop, not a daughter. Not a sister. The lake house was just as I remembered, though the paint had faded and the yard was a little wilder. Balloons and banners hung from the porch, laughter floating across the water. Through the window, I saw my mother bustling around the kitchen, my father holding court at the grill, and a swarm of cousins chasing each other through the grass. For a moment, I felt the sting of nostalgia, a flash of summer nights, fireflies, the sound of Ethan's voice calling my name. But then the tactical radio crackled in my ear, and I was snapped back to reality. We moved in quickly, Lauren leading the team. The command vehicle parked out of sight behind the neighbor's shed. I pulled on my windbreaker, a DEA in bold yellow across the back, and squared my shoulders. "Let's do this," I said, my voice steady despite the tremor inside me. As we came around the side of the house, I could see the party in full swing. White tablecloths, twinkle lights, my mother in her favorite blue dress. My father noticed the commotion first, setting down his tongs with a puzzled frown. Conversation slowed, then stopped. The crowd parted as I walked toward the patio, my badge clipped to my chest, my team fanned out behind me. The silence was thick. My mother's face went white. My cousin dropped her glass. Ethan, standing near the steps, froze mid-laugh, his eyes darting from me to the agents at my back. "Jessica," my mother whispered, her voice small. I kept walking until I stood at the edge of the crowd, every eye fixed on me. "Special Agent Jessica Morgan, DA, I announced, my voice echoing over the yard. I flashed my credentials, letting the badge catch the sunlight. "We're here on official business." Ethan found his composure quickly, pasting on a familiar smirk. "What's this, Jess? Another one of your little scenes?" His voice was mocking, but I could see the fear in his eyes, the calculation. He knew exactly what was coming. My father bristled. "Jessica, what in God's name is this about?" I took a breath, steady and deep, falling back on my training. "We have reason to believe this property has been used as a base for the manufacturing and distribution of illegal narcotics," I said. "We have a federal warrant." My mother swayed, reaching for the patio chair. My father's jaw worked, eyes wide with disbelief. "You can't be serious." Lauren stepped up, handing the warrant to my father, her tone all business. "Sir, I need you and your wife to remain here until we finish our search. Please cooperate." All eyes turned to Ethan. His smile was gone. He tried to back away, but two agents moved in, blocking his path. Ethan Morgan, EI said, "You are under arrest for manufacturing and distributing controlled substances, as well as related charges." I read him his rights, my voice steady even as my heart pounded against my ribs. He looked at me then, really looked at me. Not as his sister, not as the girl he'd framed, but as the woman who was ending his empire. There was a flicker of something in his eyes. Anger, yes, but maybe something else. Regret? I'd never know. As Lauren cuffed him, the rest of the team moved into the house. I could hear drawers opening, the thud of boots on hardwood. My family stood frozen, the party forgotten. My father slumped in his chair, my mother's face crumpled in silent tears. For a moment, I wanted to reach out, to tell her I was sorry, to promise her everything would be all right. But I knew I couldn't. This was the price of justice, the cost of truth. I turned to the crowd, neighbors, family, strangers now. 8 years ago, I was taken away from this family because of a lie. Today, I'm here to set things right. And just like that, the silence broke. Some people gasped, others muttered. My parents just stared at me, lost, broken, the foundation of their world shattered in a single afternoon. But I stood tall, my badge gleaming, the weight of my duty heavy but righteous. I wasn't done yet. The past still had debts to collect. After the arrest, the world seemed to slow. For a heartbeat, time stood suspended. The only sounds were the quiet click of handcuffs and the far-off buzz of summer insects over the lake. The anniversary party had become a tableau of shock. My aunts whispered in stunned voices. Cousins stared with wide, unblinking eyes. The last time I'd been at the center of attention in this yard, I was 8 years old, beaming over a birthday cake. Now, I was the reason for the family's public shame, a spectacle even more scandalous than my own arrest had been. Lauren led Ethan away, reading him his rights again for the benefit of witnesses. My father, face ashen, crumpled onto a lawn chair. He looked much older than I remembered, shoulders hunched and hands trembling. My mother sat next to him, clutching his arm like it was the only thing keeping her upright. Tears spilled down her cheeks, but she made no sound. It broke my heart to see her like that, but I couldn't afford to soften. A neighbor edged closer, his phone up, already filming. That's the world we live in now, tragedy and justice both becoming content for someone's feed. I didn't have time to care. I needed to finish what I'd started. I turned to the assembled crowd, holding my head high. My name is Jessica Morgan. I am a special agent with the DEA, and for the past 18 months, I've been investigating a narcotics ring operating right here in our county. The leader of that ring is my brother, Ethan Morgan. Gasps rippled through the group. I saw old friends' faces twist in confusion, some in disbelief, some in the dawning realization that they'd missed the signs. 8 years ago, I continued, Ethan called the police and told them I was a danger to my family. I was arrested in front of you all. He did it to protect himself, to make sure no one would ever believe me if I got too close to his secret. And you all believed him, without ever asking for the truth. I let that hang in the air. No one moved. Even the breeze seemed to pause. My father raised his head, voice breaking. Jess, is this real? His hand shook as he reached out, but he pulled it back as if afraid of the answer. Yes, Dad. I wish it wasn't. But this is real. The meth lab was here, at the lake house. We have proof. We have everything we need. Agent Chen emerged from the house, carrying evidence bags, chemical containers, receipts, handwritten ledgers. She nodded to me grimly. My father stared at the items as if seeing them through a fog. "I need you both to come with me," Lauren said gently to my parents. "We'll need statements. You aren't under arrest, but we need to confirm you had no knowledge of what was happening here." My mother finally found her voice, barely more than a whisper. "I never thought. Not Ethan. He was always our good boy." A bitter laugh almost escaped me. The good boy. The golden child. The son who could do no wrong, even as he was breaking the law under their roof. I felt the urge to say so, to unload years of pain and betrayal, but I swallowed it. This wasn't about vengeance. This was about truth. As my parents walked away with the agents, heads bowed, the rest of the family lingered, caught between concern and curiosity. I saw old wounds in their faces, pity, fear, even some anger. But above all, I saw the uncomfortable reckoning of reality. The Morgan family secret was out, and nothing would ever be the same. Inside, the house was chaos. Agents moved from room to room, cataloguing evidence, photographing every suspicious stain or scrap of paper. The smell of cleaning chemicals mixed with the faint, sickle-sweet scent of meth production. I felt sick, remembering childhood nights spent here, the echo of laughter and the distant slap of water against the dock. I stood in the living room, letting the memories wash over me. The Christmas tree in the corner every winter. The dent in the wall from when Ethan and I fought over a remote control. Our father's ancient record player in the corner, untouched for years. Now, all of it was evidence. Lauren found me there, her voice gentle. "You okay?" "I don't know," I admitted. "I thought I'd feel vindicated. But mostly, I feel empty." That's normal. Justice doesn't always feel good. Sometimes it just feels necessary. She was right, of course. I thought back to all the nights I'd spent questioning myself, wondering if I'd made up the betrayal, if maybe my family was right to turn away. But standing in the ruins of my old life, I knew the truth mattered, even if it hurt. Especially if it hurt. A few hours later, as the last evidence was bagged and tagged, I walked outside to see my parents sitting on the porch steps. My father's hands were clasped, his head bowed. My mother looked up at me with red-rimmed eyes. "Jessica," she began, but the words failed her. I sat next to them, feeling the distance that had grown between us, the chasm of years and grief and choices. "I'm sorry," I said finally, my voice rough. "I'm sorry it came to this. But I had to do my job." My father didn't look at me. "We failed you," he said, voice hoarse. "We failed both of you." For a moment, I was a child again, wanting nothing more than my father's arms around me, my mother's warm embrace. But that girl was gone. "We all failed each other," I said, standing up. "But now you know the truth." I left them there, sitting in the twilight, the ruins of celebrations scattered around their feet. As I got into my car, I saw my own reflection in the window, tired, older, but strong. Not a daughter, not a sister, not a disappointment. Just Jessica Morgan, special agent, finally free. The days that followed were a blur of paperwork, debriefings, and the quiet aftershocks of a life appended. I moved between the Wisconsin Sheriff's Office and the DEA field office in downtown Chicago, living out of a duffel bag and falling asleep wherever I could find a spare cot. My badge felt heavier than ever. The news broke fast. A lake house meth lab exposed by DEA agent E, and by morning, the Morgan family scandal was all over local media. Pictures of Ethan in cuffs, my own somber face beside the words of betrayal and a family tragedy. The phone wouldn't stop ringing, but I let it buzz until the battery died. I wasn't ready to talk, not to anyone. Especially not my parents. The department, usually so formal, handled me with unusual care. Lieutenant Harper called me in for a wellness check that was half therapy, half paperwork. "You're entitled to some time off, Jess," as she said gently, sliding a mug of coffee across the table. "You need space to process this. Don't try to carry it all alone." I nodded, numb. For so long, work had been my shield, my escape from everything I'd lost. Now, even that refuge felt tainted by the shadow of family. The betrayal had been so public, so complete. Lauren checked in every day. She brought takeout and sat with me in silence, knowing that sometimes words just made things worse. She'd been with me through shootouts, high-speed chases, months of undercover uncertainty, but this, she admitted, was a different kind of pain. "It's easy to fight bad guys," as she said, peeling the lid off her soup. "Family, that's the one fight you can't train for." Despite the ache, I found myself thinking of the past with new clarity. My parents had always been strict, but loving. They worked hard, kept traditions, believed in appearances. I wondered how they were coping now, with the whole town whispering. The Morgan name, once synonymous with Sunday school and charity drives, was now linked to crime scenes and mugshots. Part of me wanted to reach out, to comfort them. But another part, older, wiser, less forgiving, needed space. The investigation moved quickly. With Ethan's arrest, the entire network started to unravel. His meticulous notes, once a source of pride, became the prosecution's treasure trove. Agents raided stash houses across state lines. Old associates flipped. Ethan himself, so clever, so smug, sat silent through the first few interrogations. When he finally spoke, his words were few, his eyes dull, as if a light inside him had gone out. I didn't visit him in jail. I couldn't. There was nothing left to say. The fallout for my parents was brutal. The house was seized as evidence, declared uninhabitable after the environmental team found chemical contamination everywhere. Walls, pipes, even the soil around the old fire pit. The family's savings vanished in a matter of weeks. Lawyers, clean-up crews, mounting bills. My parents moved into a small rental apartment on the edge of town, trading lake views for linoleum floors and borrowed furniture. I heard about it from a neighbor, not from them. My mother started writing letters. The first was formal, apologies and explanations, neat script on lined paper. The second came 2 weeks later, more raw, pages smudged with tears. She wrote about the silence at the dinner table, the empty rooms, how my father sat for hours staring at old photographs. She begged for forgiveness, for understanding. She asked if we could meet, talk, try to repair what was left. I read the first paragraph, then set the letter aside, unfinished. Some wounds, I realized, needed time, maybe more than I could ever give. My father didn't write. But I knew he was hurting. I remembered the man who taught me to ride a bike, who showed me how to cast a fishing line off the dock. I remembered the night after my arrest when he said, "As she's no daughter of ours." I wondered if he replayed those words as much as I did. Regret is a hard thing to measure, especially between parents and children. The weeks passed. The media frenzy faded. I threw myself back into work, but nothing felt quite the same. The team at the DEA became my makeshift family. Lauren dragged me out for pizza after late shifts. Grace Harper forced me to take weekends off. I ran along Lake Michigan, watched the city skyline shimmer at sunset, tried to remember who I'd been before everything fell apart. I started to realize that closure wasn't about a dramatic reunion or a public apology. It was quieter, a slow, stubborn rebuilding from the inside out. I learned to forgive myself for wanting my family to believe in me. I stopped expecting the old house, the old holidays, the old normal to come back. Sometimes healing wasn't about what you got back, but about what you learned to live without. One evening, sitting on my fire escape with a mug of tea, Lauren asked if I was okay. For the first time in years, I didn't have to lie. "Yeah," I said, watching the lights of the city flicker on one by one. "I think I really am." And for that moment, it was enough. 3 weeks after the raid, Ethan stood in a crowded courtroom, wrists in cuffs, as the judge read out the charges: manufacturing, trafficking, money laundering, and more. The hearing lasted less than 20 minutes. Ethan never looked at me, but I watched his jaw set, the stubborn tilt of his chin, the same look he'd worn as a child when caught sneaking cookies from the jar. Only now, there was no charm left, only exhaustion. He was sentenced to 15 years in federal prison. I didn't attend the sentencing. The newspapers covered it in detail: front-page photos of my brother, headlines like a golden boy's fall year and a family torn apart by crime. Colleagues at the DEA texted me updates. Some said they were sorry, some sent words of congratulations, but all the messages felt hollow. I was already on to the next case, assigned to a DEA task force in Seattle tracking cartel money through shell companies and suburban banks. In a way, the new city was a relief. No one knew my name, no one whispered about my family, no one looked at me with pity or awe. I was just another badge, another pair of hands, and that was all I wanted. The Morgan house on the lake was declared a hazardous site and marked for demolition. I read the official report: chemical contamination so severe that no amount of cleaning could make it safe. Childhood drawings still hung on the walls when the bulldozers came. My mother sent me a photo, her and Dad standing by the dock, arms around each other, faces drawn but proud, as if clinging to the last remnants of dignity. "We said goodbye," as she wrote, "but it doesn't feel real." My parents lost their life savings trying to defend Ethan and pay for cleanup costs. My mother went back to work part-time as a school secretary. My father, once the stoic provider, started volunteering at the food pantry. They moved into a small duplex on the edge of Milwaukee, neighbors to people who didn't know their story, which was both a blessing and a strange new pain. My mother's letters continued, sometimes hopeful, sometimes desperate, always laced with the ache of loss. She wrote about missing the smell of fresh-cut grass at the lake, the sound of Ethan's laugh, even the silence I'd left behind. I tried to answer, once. I wrote a page and a half, telling her I forgave her, that I understood why she believed Ethan, that families break in all sorts of ways. But before I mailed it, I realized I wasn't ready. I folded it up and tucked it into a book on my shelf, beside the other things I wasn't ready to let go. Some truths need more time. Some bridges need more than words. In Seattle, I built a new routine. My apartment was small and quiet. The rain a constant companion. I kept to myself at first, content to blend in with the city's grey skyline and caffeine-fueled mornings. The DEA squad was tight-knit, a mix of lifers and transfers, all hardened by years of seeing the worst humanity could offer. But slowly, they let me in. We shared bad coffee and late-night takeout, war stories, and dark jokes only cops can make. For the first time since my exile, I found laughter that wasn't edged with bitterness. Lauren visited for a weekend, dragging me out to Pike Place Market and the Space Needle, insisting we be tourists. "You can start over here," as she said, pressing a cup of hot chocolate into my hands. "Nobody cares who your family is. Just you." I realized how much I needed to hear that. For so long, my identity had been bound up in what I'd lost: my family, my reputation, my sense of belonging. But here, I was learning to build something new, not as Jessica the disappointment or Jessica the ghost, but as Jessica Morgan, survivor. Back home, the family tried to mend in their own ways. My mother sent updates about her new job, my father about the pantry. I didn't answer, but I read every word. They invited me for Thanksgiving, then for Christmas, then for a birthday. Each time, I hesitated, my fingers hovering over the reply, my heart aching with the weight of maybe. I knew I wasn't ready. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Forgiveness, I was learning, wasn't a door you opened for someone else. Sometimes, it was a window you cracked open for yourself, letting in a sliver of light. As winter set in, I found myself returning to the water, long walks along Puget Sound, the salty air sharp in my lungs. I thought of the lake house, of summer mornings fishing with Dad, of fireflies and laughter. I let myself grieve for the life that was gone, for the girl who still wanted her family to love her, even after everything. But grief became something else, too. Strength, maybe. Or a kind of clarity. The woman I was becoming didn't need a perfect past or flawless family. She needed purpose and integrity and the courage to keep going even when the world turned upside down. One night, after a long shift, I sat on my apartment balcony, Seattle glowing below. I thought about everything I'd lost and everything I'd found. And for the first time in years, I realized I could breathe without the ache of old wounds tightening around my chest. The story wasn't finished. Maybe it never would be. But at last, I was writing it on my own terms. Months slipped by, marked by the rhythm of rain on Seattle's windows, the pulse of city lights through fog, the distant echo of sirens in the night. I learned how to be invisible in a new place, how to make coffee just for myself, to shop for groceries without planning for Sunday dinners, to answer only to my own shadow. It was lonely at first, but after so many years of forced solitude, I found I liked the quiet. I liked how the pain receded, not all at once, but in gentle waves that ebbed a little further each day. I poured myself into my work. The cases grew more complex, and the stakes felt higher. The faces changed, different traffickers, new methods, ever-shifting rules, but at the core, it was always the same: people trying to escape their own pain, to build something for themselves out of desperation or greed. I saw versions of Ethan everywhere: charming, reckless, always one step ahead until the world finally caught up. Some days, I felt a flash of anger, wishing I could have saved him. Other days, it was relief, the knowledge that I'd stopped something much worse before it could grow. My reputation in the DEA grew quietly. I wasn't the agent with the loudest voice or the most arrests, but people knew I would do the job, whatever it took, no matter how long. I was promoted to lead a task force, and for the first time in a long while, I felt a sense of pride not tied to anyone else's expectations. My teammates became my new family. Maria, who baked for the whole squad and told stories about her sons. Abdul, who never lost his temper but could outthink anyone in a crisis. And Nate, a former Marine with a crooked smile and a knack for listening when I needed it most. Still, even with this new tribe, the ache of my old life would sometimes creep back in. The urge to call my mother and ask about her day, to send my father a photo of the sunset over the sound. The holidays were the hardest. The first Christmas in Seattle, I tried to ignore it all, volunteering for overtime, keeping my apartment dark. But Lauren called from Chicago, refusing to let me sulk. "You're family to me," she said. Pizza, Zoom, your ugly holiday sweater. I'm not asking, I'm telling. We spent hours laughing at bad jokes and even worse karaoke, and for the first time, Christmas didn't sting so much. One morning in early spring, a thick envelope appeared in my mailbox, postmarked Milwaukee. My mother's handwriting was shaky, the return address their new duplex. I stared at it for a long time before opening it. Inside were pages of memories, apologies, and confessions. Her guilt at believing Ethan, her fear of what people would say, her regret at letting pride become a wall between us. She wrote about my father, how he rarely spoke about the old house or Ethan, how he now measured his days in small acts of service, stacking food pantry shelves, fixing the neighbor's leaky sink, holding her hand as if she might disappear. There was a photo, too, my parents at the local park, a little older, a little smaller, but standing close together. On the back, in my mother's careful script, "We miss you. We're proud of you. Please come home when you're ready." I cried for a long time after reading it. Not just for the pain, but for the hope, thin, trembling, but real, that maybe, somehow, we could begin again. I didn't reply right away. I needed to hold that hope close, to see if it was strong enough to survive in the light. As the months rolled on, I found myself changing. The walls I'd built so carefully softened just a little. I joined my team for drinks after work, invited Maria and Abdul over for dinner, even let Nate teach me how to play guitar on lazy Sundays. I was still Jessica Morgan, still a cop, still haunted by old betrayals, but now I was more. I was a woman learning to forgive, not just her family, but herself. One afternoon, I got a call from Lauren. She was being transferred to Los Angeles, promoted, finally, for the work we'd started together years ago. "I owe you everything, Jess," she said. "If you ever want to start over somewhere warm, you know where to find me." We promised to stay in touch, and as I hung up, I realized how grateful I was for the people who'd stood by me, no matter how messy things became. Gradually, the need to hide from my past faded. I stopped searching for my family's approval in every success, every hard-won case. I started to measure my worth in the lives I'd helped, the friends who trusted me, the peace I felt at the end of a long day. One Saturday, standing at the water's edge, the wind cool and clean, I let myself remember everything, the old pain, the family I'd lost, the choices that had brought me here. I realized that grief and love can coexist, that forgiveness doesn't erase the past but makes the future possible. I pulled out my phone and typed a message to my mother. "Hi, Mom. I'm doing okay. I think I'm ready to talk." I hovered over send for a moment, then pressed it, letting the words fly out into the world, small and brave. For the first time in years, I felt something close to peace. The story wasn't over. Maybe it never would be.